So, would anyone like to ask a question?
Yes, please.
I have a question. We were in Israel this past summer. Tell me how you think the government is going to respond to the protests of the tent cities and all those who are looking for housing and are trying to better themselves, and what can the government do to help them along the way?
Well, if the government is going to decide to act in the way it acted in the past, then it's not going to do much, and it may lose its seat, may lose power. In other words, there'll be election. But if the government understands that it has to think out of the box, that it has to talk to these people, talk to them directly, and address the issues, and start really solving, not just by establishing committees that make recommendations, but by really taking it. You know what? They asked me, on one of the television programs, they said, what do you think Netanyahu should do? I said, don't establish a Trachtenberg committee. Go down, talk to them. Talk to them. Not only talk, but listen. This is a world where people are talking without listening. Nobody's listening. That's what Simon and Garfunkel said also in the 70s. And today you need people to listen. And you know what? If you don't listen to them, they listen to each other. They got this powerful tool called Facebook, called social networking, which created a new type. In the Arab world, it erupted in violence. In Israel, it just created this mass movement. People who don't know physically each other interact and communicate on Facebook, on Twitter. And it creates a new form of solidarity, unknown to sociologists. I studied sociology, I know, where we talked, how do you conduct changes in an environment, in a society? You need organic solidarity. In other words, the people will join together, will sit, will be in physical contact, and then you mass them, they come to the streets, and they make a revolution. That's more or less what the theory was in the 19th century. Today, it's different. You can start, I don't know how it's going to end, but you can start a revolution without physical contact by banking on what I call cybernetic or cyber solidarity. A solidarity of people that finally, when they talk to each other, they feel they count. What is the problem? Why did most protests, because most of the people who protest, after they've been on the street, they say, no, it won't help, we don't count, we can't change the government, or if it's not democratic government, they're shot in the streets, and then they say, oh, why, we don't want to risk our life. But today, they're not afraid. They lost the fear factor. In democracy, you see it by they keep going and they keep coming, and if the government is not going to respond in 2 months to some of the majors and show some real changes that are going through, they will come again with the 10 cities. And in the Arab squares, in Tahrir Square and in Dara, they will keep coming against the bullets because they lost their fear. They get I would say this is something very deep that is happening around the world with the young generation. They get their strength, they get their courage from the fact that now they count. That if this guy, before he goes to the square, and he knows tomorrow he may face the policeman, he makes a statement and puts on his blog, on the internet, now he's an icon of over 1 million people who are watching him. And he's ready to go. Okay, I'll die, but my message, my name will still be there. We count. How did Obama win the election? He took people who thought they don't count and told them, you count. Here, I talk to you, you talk to me, you give me $80, and you count. And they started participating. It's a revolution. It's a revolution that starts with perception, but ends up with masses of people coming through. And the government must understand the language of these people. Talk to them in their language. Meet them at their level. Don't try to say, oh, come to the committee, because otherwise they're going to lose this generation. And look, this is a changing, times are changing, this world around us, and particularly the Arab world. Now, the Israeli world, there's two, belongs to a younger generation. Because of longer longevity and demographic trends, 50% to 60% of the population in the Middle East at large is below the age of 24. 70% of their information they don't get from television. They don't have television sets. They have iPads, laptop computers. They get it from the computer. And it's an interactive type of system. So I think once the government, and I think a democratic government can do it, and the Israeli government, understands it. Once you start talking to their people on their level and try to meet their demand, then we're on the right track. I think there will be a trial and error. The government will try something, it won't work, and then it will be forced to do it. Why? Because because there's always election. I mean, you know, election is a really, really important whipping rod or whipping thing over the head, or Damocles sword over the heads of the. See what the 9th District in New York, the loss of the 9th District has done to President Obama. I have never heard an American president give such a Zionist speech in my life.
Dr. Gissin, you talk about language. I resent and I object to the language that's used about Israel. When you talk about the legitimate state of Israel, what other country do you have to use the word legitimate? You said legitimate United States, legitimate Scotland, legitimate what? Israel is a country. It's not legitimate because the opposite of legitimate is illegitimate. And when you say it's legitimate, you could just as well, that's why they say it's not legitimate. How do we change the words? I read the editorial, the letters to the editor today in the LA Times, which by itself I shouldn't read because it raises blood pressure. 2 of the 3 letters were so anti-Israel. How do we change? You know, they say Israel with its brains and its money and its power, but the PR is terrible. People, you hear that the words that people are saying before the UN, since the UN, are anti-Israel and getting more and more so. Yes, thank God for the Christians. Thank God for the people in this room who are strongly pro-Israel. But the majority of people, they don't read. They don't want to know the facts. How do we get that to them?
Well, there are many ways. First of all, you got to reach the younger generation, mobilize them to do it. And then you have to speak them their language and also the language of the world. You can't apologize. You say, okay, tell the world, you know, we're ready to make a deal. We're ready to bend backwards all the way that without breaking our back. But then, if that doesn't work, we'll kick ass. We also kick ass, yes? I tell it to the Palestinians, you know, you want a deal, you get a good deal. You want to mess with us like you've been messing with us on and off for 62 years, we'll kick your ass. And you know, for how long? As long as you keep doing the wrong things. Also, you have to do, you know, sometimes you have to ridicule. You can't attack. You know, when I talk about Israel, legitimate country, I said, you know what? Don't think about Israel. I said, think about the Palestinian state. I think, you want a Palestinian state. That's what you claim. I'm not sure. Now, I'm not sure that you want a Palestinian state. But it seems that you don't want a Jewish state more than you want a Palestinian state. So, you have to decide. But let's assume you want a Palestinian state. Then, for God's sake, why do you kick the bucket? They looked at me and said, I said, I'll tell you a story. I was raised in a kibbutz. In my kibbutz, when I was 5 years old, I used to work in the refit. Yeah. And we didn't have electrical pumps. We have to milk the cows by hand. And you learn by 5. You have a little stool. You sit underneath the cow and you milk it. You know, pretty 5 o'clock in the morning. That's the time when they get the best milk. They had several good milking cows. Prize winners in Israel. One of them was Dina. Dina was my favorite cow. I used to sit underneath Dina, milk her, you know, like in 30 minutes I threw 3 buckets full, big buckets, you know, full of milk. I get up, I go to the tree for a minute, I come back, she kicked the bucket. One she kicked. I said, why is it the hell with it? And we tried to figure out why Dina, after giving 3 buckets full of water, milk, kicks the bucket. I said to the Palestinian, you're like my cow, Dina. I mean, you give such wonderful milk to yourself, to the rest of the people, but every now and then you kick the bucket. You almost have it, you kick the bucket. That instead of saying what Abba even said, they don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. They kick the bucket. The image of that cow that kicks the bucket, you know, that remains in people's mind. And you can do so good, so much good. That's, you know, instead of saying, oh, look how bad you are, you're killers. No. You have some good in yourself, and look what you can do when you don't kill, when you don't kick the bucket. So why do you kick the bucket? Then how do you want to have a Palestinian state when every time you fill the buckets of milk, you kick it?
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned in your marvelous presentation the percentages of people, 1/3 here, 1/3 here, 1/3 there. 1/3 defend the country.
No, it's all 1/3.
Okay, it's 1/3 defending the country. What is the Israeli government's comment or feeling about all of these American young men and women, in answer to your remark, that are making Aliyah and joining the army like our own grandson will be doing in a few months? I mean, there's a tremendous influx of pro-Zionist, pro-Israel feeling amongst American youth today.
I'm saying this is the proper, propitious time, most proper time to say it, because I said Rosh Hashanah is the time of rejuvenation. We need an infusion of new blood. And you know, sometimes I envy those kids that come from the United States with a Zionist fervor, with a Zionist understanding much better than our kids, you know. And I look back, you know, and I say, well, we failed someplace in transmitting these values, in showing, you know, what are national monuments in the United States. Everybody knows what Mount Rushmore is. They go to the Lincoln Memorial. They adore it. And in Israel, when you say the Cave of the Patriarch, they say that belongs to the settlers. Or when I speak on the major historical assets of an 3,300 years of history uninterrupted, and I say that, oh, that you sound like a settler. You sound like a right-winger. I said, I'm not a right-winger. I'm not a left-winger. I'm simply right. So, you know, the right-winger, left-winger, the old definitions don't carry. You know, as we go through this turmoil, as we go through this vortex of change, people will realize that the old definitions don't count. What counts is the things that you believe in, the things that are important for you. And definitely, we need those who are Jews. You know what? I even envy the Christians that come over and say, and I'm castigated for supporting them. They tell me, and I tell them, listen, you know what's good about those Christian guys? They give you, you don't have to accept their prophecy in order to gain their friendship.
Raanan, I'm going to give the last question, because we have a few seconds, though, to a good friend of ours, a good friend of the Jewish people, an outstanding star, another mensch, another dreamer, Mike Burstyn. Mike, you have the last question.
I guess just to follow up on your point this morning of our cherishing life, especially now. It's been over 5 years since Gilad Shalit, this wonderful young man, has been sitting in God knows what conditions we can't even imagine. Over 5 years. In your judgment and in your knowledge, maybe you don't have the facts. And there have been 2 Israeli governments since, maybe even 3. Has the Israeli government done enough or gone far enough to finally solve this problem and get this young man home?
I know they've gone as far as they can within the existing frame of mind and the assumptions, I would say, the security assumption and everything. But I think there's a growing body of people in Israel that tells you, you know, even, I'd say, defense experts, ex-Mossad people, ex-generals will come, and I would say, listen, we got to finish this, we got to bring him home for the sake of future generations, for the sake of the core value of cherishing life. We first have to bring it home. About the price and how we're going to manage it, that we turn a leaf and we start anew. Oh, we can have a bank of prisoners. We can tell those prisoners that are released, you know, this time we brought you to justice. This time we'll bring justice to you. There's so many ways to handle the situation, you know. But of course, you know, what happens is that there are many people, it became a political issue. And people in the government are afraid to lose power. What will their own constituents say? The hell with it. That's what I said, you know, when I said to Netanyahu about the social protest. Forget about this. Lead. Go ahead and take. You seize. You be the guy who will start thinking out of the box. Don't tell other people to think out of the box. Think out of the box. Bring him home and then figure out what we're going to do with all these terrorists and what we're going to do with the future of terrorism. We got the answers. I mean, you know why? Not because of Gilad Shalit. Because we wouldn't be where we are if we weren't a problem-solving nations. Our minds are constantly working to solve problems. Problems of security, problems of health, and we always find solutions. And you want to tell me we won't find us after Gilad, we get the best deal, we pay whatever price they ask, and we get Gilad Shalit, we won't find a solution to what is happening with the terrorists? Well, we've been living with that for so many years, and we're the leading country today in that respect. But nothing can substitute for an erosion of that value, of that core value that is the basic consensus of Israeli society. Look, I'll give you an example from another area, and believe me, I don't want to be quoted, but that's because I've taught American politics. What's the problem with America resuscitating its economy? Core